Okay, gang, here's something a little different. As you know, I do the restoration stuff on all the Mustangs and Camaros and whatever, and I do take on other work like brake jobs or tune-ups or steering, whatever. In this case, a friend of ours has a, I think it was a 2001 Suburban 1500. I know the vehicle has about 200,000 miles on it, and he called me up and said, hey, the rear end, or there's a weird noise coming out of the back of the vehicle. So I drove it and I heard a distinct kind of gear slippage sound. So initially I thought, well, we'll just replace the rear end. But then I called a guy I know at GM, and he said, well, let's open it up and see what's going on first. So bear with me here a second. That's what I did. And as you can see, the gears up there, and I think those are called spider gears, are rounded off, basically chewed up. And I did notice that the noise was coming from the left side as I was driving it, and I just now took the cover off. So this is my first look at it, aside from grabbing the camera. So I think I can fix that. Now, I haven't done much with rear ends or differentials. I know how they work, but I've never taken one out or messed with it. But my friend assured me, hey, we can fix this. And that's a good thing, because it's hard to find a rear end for these. This one in particular is a 4:10 ratio, and the bulk of them, I believe, were 373. So it would have been difficult to change it and still have it function because of the computer programming and the way the transmission shifts and all that. So this is another little project at Joe Daddy's Garage, and I'm going to try to do a step-by-step if I can, but I'm not surprised at what I found. It's not something I'm used to working on, so stay tuned. Okay, so again, I talked to my buddy at GM. He told me they can get the gears in a set, and it shouldn't be any big deal to change them, which I don't think it will be. What I'm going to do is I'll go through the steps that we need to do to take this apart. Now, of course, this is a GM rear end, so it's going to have C-clips, and I'll show you that. But what I'll have to do outside here is take off the calipers, caliper bracket, take the rotors off, and that'll free up the axle itself. And what I mean is I need to be able to pull the axles out. So once I get all that off, I'll go back into the differential center, remove a pin or two, and then I can pull the C-clips, and I'll show you that when I get to that point. Okay, so I'm going to pull the calipers off. In this case, I have to put a 16mm wrench on. There's the mount for the caliper. This will turn because the bolt is in this, and this is kind of like a slider internally, but in this case, sometimes this 12mm bolt won't turn, and you'll see this turn, and you got to put a 16 on there to hold it in place to get the 12 off. Hope that makes sense. Okay, got the caliper off. It's a lightweight caliper, but you still want to support it, so it's sitting up here in this trailing arm. Set the pads inside there so they're out of the way. The next step is getting this bracket off, and that's an 18mm. And what I normally do is put a wrench on it and hit it with a hammer, because beating up your hands is no fun. When you get to that point, set the bracket aside, get the rotor loose, remove it. That exposes the axle. This also shows you the internal drum brake that's a parking brake, and these were not very efficient. They wore out pretty quick, and as you can see, there's a pad on that side and there's nothing on this side. You can see where they've tried to use it, but it's unlikely they're going to want to replace that, but I'll talk to the buddy of mine and see what they think. Next step, once I get the other side loose, is removing the center pins that hold the spider gears in place, and that way I can remove the C-clips on the axles. Just going to show you a little bit more of the ugly that's going on in here. I'm turning the right axle. Look at that. You can see those gears just fighting with each other. Ugh. So you can imagine the sound this was making trying to drive this thing. What I'm trying to do though is I'm going to turn the carrier a little bit, and there's a bolt right there. You can kind of see it. Little bolt. That little bolt holds this pin in place, and that, or pin or shaft, however you want to label it, and that thing you can see goes straight up. Kind of hard to show you here. Right here, in between. And once I remove those, you can also see this. Here's the shaft, and this is the end of the axle. Okay. Inside of, or around this axle, is what's called a C-clip. So once I remove this pin, actually once I remove the bolt, remove this pin, the axles can now move in. This pin keeps the axles from moving in and out. That's the stop point for those. Once I remove that, I can push the axle in from either side, and then that C-clip will be exposed. It'll come out of the gear, and that clip is held in. There's a recess in this gear right here that holds the C-clip. It's like a puzzle. It's not a very complicated puzzle, but it's kind of a neat puzzle because of all the machining and stuff. So once I push the axle in, take the C-clip off, then the axle can go out either direction, whichever it needs to be. So I'll pull that little bolt out right there and go from there. Okay, so this little bolt right here, this is an 8mm, and you really want to use like a 6-point. Don't try a 12-point. These things are pretty tight usually, and if you just round it off with a 12-point. So I'm going to remove that bolt. You see it's got a long shaft to it. I'm going to set that aside, and now this pin right here will move. And see if I can get my hand in there and push on it. There, you see it coming out. So at this point, if I can get a hold of it, maybe I stick the bolt back in it. Oh, there you go. There's the pin. Okay. And I know it's tricky with trying to show you this, but here's the main shaft pin, and it's coming out. And there it is. And you see it's got some flats on it right here and here. I believe that when that goes up, they milled those for some reason, but your axle rides on the round part. So obviously they couldn't make the whole thing flat, but they made it, you know, for some reason they made those round sections. So I'm going to set that aside, and I'll have to turn the carrier, so then I'll show you the C-clips. Okay, hopefully I can pull this off for you. I turned the carrier, so now you can see all the spider gears. I'm going to push in on the axle. I just pushed in on the right axle, and now you can see that little plate has appeared. That's the C-clip. What I'm going to do is try to get it out with a magnet, and there it is. That's why it's called a C-clip, because it looks like the letter C. So that takes care of the right one, and now I can take the axle. You can see it. I can move with my hand and slide it outboard, and that'll expose or release that gear, and then I can remove it. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and then pull those gears, the gear set out of there. Okay, both axles have been released. The C-clips have been released. Now I'm just going to rotate these gears, and you can see this one just kind of slides right out. So that's the gear on one side. You can see the condition there is a little rough. Set that aside, and now you can see the other gear on the back side. It's floating around in there, and I'll have to wiggle these around and get that one out too. Here it comes. I don't want to drop it because I got the drain pan right below. So there's the other one, and again, chewed to pieces. I'm sure you can see that. So that takes care of the two gears on the side, on the top and bottom, and then I'll have to get these off, and I don't know if they just pull off straight or not. I'll have to research that a little bit, but it at least gets the top two out, and then I'm sure there's a release for these somehow. So, and that was pretty simple. I just took a screwdriver and wedged it behind it and pried on it right there, and gear came loose, no problem. Let's see if I can get it out. There it is. There you can see the splines where the axle slides into it, and you can also see some wear and tear on that as well. Set that one aside. Let me see if I can pop the other one out with one hand. There we go. Get behind it. Yep, there it is. That's all it takes. Like I said, it's just a big puzzle. You know, each piece interlocks to the next, and hard to believe this thing even moved. So what I'll do next is I'll clean out the carrier or the housing. I know there's metal chips and junk down in there. Maybe wash this thing out a little bit and look over the gears. It looks like the ring gear and pinion are no problem. I think those are in great shape. I'll probably go to GM or somebody and see if I can't pick up a spider gear kit. I know they sell these at Summit and different things, but I don't know if they have them for this particular rear end. So stay tuned, and we'll be putting this back together soon and getting it back on the road. Alright, I've cleaned out most of the debris from the differential, but I wanted to show you this. Of course, this is the cover, and this is why they put magnets in there. Look at this. That's all metal. Just a big pile of little metal shavings. So I don't know how long this took to fail, but obviously there's a lot of pieces here. And like I said, I've cleaned out the differential housing, and now I'll clean all this up. And I haven't gotten the gears yet. I checked at GM, and they are about $430 for that spider gear set. And I checked around and found at Advance I can get the same set for about $160 plus tax. Now I'm not saying it's the same manufacturer, and I can't guarantee the same quality, but I'm going to go with the Advance set. And once I get those this afternoon, I'll show those as well. Okay, so like I said before, I went to GM and I checked on pricing, and for this set of gears it was $427, and that was at the counter. I went to Advance and I found this set of gears, part number GM 8.6 BIL, internal kit for an open rear end, and these were, I think, $160 or so plus tax. So I get it at the counter. I opened it up and looked at it, but I also have it here, and what I wanted to show you was the difference. This is the original GM gear. This is Advanced gear. Now I'm sure there's some, you know, copyright laws or whatever that they're not allowed to duplicate the exact same gear. So anyway, here we have a few less teeth, but they're bigger than compared to the original. The only difference I can see is there's just a very subtle difference between the drop between these machine faces, and I don't think that's going to be that big a deal. Otherwise, the diameters are the same here. I've already used a caliper and checked them, and the spline count is exactly the same. So I don't think that's a big deal. Also, on the small gear, you can see the difference, obviously. And I don't think it's going to make any difference as far as performance. You know, this thing is not out being drag raced, it's just being driven. And I also checked, this is the new shaft, and this is the old gear. Fits on it perfect. So pretty happy with that. Along with that came a pair of shims, and these go there if needed, and also a set of these, which are the tapered ones, which act the same as the one that came with the original, which would go like that, but on the new ones obviously. So there you go. Next thing I'm going to do is put it together, check my gaps. I don't think it'll be a problem, but we'll find out. Okay, the gears are in. Now obviously you do this backwards the way you took it out, but I did notice that I had to set the lower one in and then rotate the gear to let it go kind of up in the carrier, so that I could put this one in and turn the gear the other way so that it would draw this one back up in. It took me a few tries, but I got it in there, got the bolt in place, and just grab the shaft here, nice and smooth. So the next step is getting the cover back on. I'm going to use some Right Stuff gasket maker. Really have good results with this stuff. And then, per the manual reference, this is what it calls for: SAE 75W90 synthetic gear oil, and it calls for 4.2 pints, not quarts, pints. So I'll get this buttoned up, finish the job, and move on.